Life of Muhammad, peace be upon him. Arabia at the time of the prophets, peace be upon him. Birth. The Prophetsa was born in Mecca in August 570 AD. He was given the name Muhammadsa, which means the praised one. To understand his life and character we must have some idea of the conditions which obtained in Arabia at the time of his birth. When he was born, almost the whole of Arabia believed in a polytheistic form of religion. The Arabs traced their descent to Abrahamas. They knew that Abrahamas was a monotheistic teacher. In spite of this, they entertained polytheistic beliefs and were given to polytheistic practices. In defense, they said that some human beings are outstanding in their contact with God. Their intercession on behalf of others is accepted by God. To reach Him is difficult for ordinary human beings. They must have others to intercede for them in order to obtain God's pleasure and help. Thus they were able to combine their reverence for Abrahamas with their own polytheistic beliefs. Abrahamas, they said, was a holy man. He was able to reach God without intercession, whilst ordinary Meccans could not do so. The people of Mecca, therefore, had made idols of holy and righteous persons, and these they worshipped, and to these they made offerings in order to please God through them. This attitude was primitive, illogical, and full of defects. But the Meccans were not worried by these. They had not had a monotheistic teacher for a long time, and polytheism, once it takes root, spreads, and knows no bounds. The number of gods begins to increase. At the time of the Prophet's birth, it is said that in the Kaaba alone, the sacred mosque of all Islam, and the house of worship built by Abrahamas and his son Ishmael, there were 360 idols. It seems that for every day of the lunar year the Meccans had an idol. In other big centers there were other idols. So that we can say that every part of Arabia was steeped in polytheistic belief. The Arabs were devoted to the culture of speech. They were much interested in their spoken language and were very keen on its advance. Their intellectual ambitions, however, were scant. Of history, geography, mathematics, etc., they knew nothing. But as they were a desert people and had to find their way about in the desert without the assistance of landmarks, they had developed a keen interest in astronomy. There was in the whole of Arabia not a single school. It is said that in Mecca only a few individuals could read and write. From the moral point of view, the Arabs were a contradictory people. They suffered from some extreme moral defects, but at the same time they possessed some admirable qualities. They were given to excessive drinking. To become drunk and to run wild under the effect of drink was for them a virtue, not a vice. Their conception of a gentleman was one who should entertain his friends and neighbors to drinking bouts. Every rich man would hold a drinking party at least 5 times a day. Gambling was their national sport, but they had made of it a fine art. They did not gamble in order to become rich. Winners were expected to entertain their friends. In times of war, funds were collected through gambling. Even today we have the institution of prize bonds to raise money for war. The institution has been resuscitated in our time by the people of Europe and America, but they should remember that in this they only imitate the Arabs. When war came, Arabian tribes would hold a gambling party. Whoever won had to bear the greater part of the expenses of the war. Of the amenities of civilized life the Arabs knew nothing. Their chief occupation was trade, and to this end they sent their caravans to far-off places, such as Abyssinia, Syria, Palestine, and even India. The rich among them were great admirers of Indian swords. Their clothing needs were supplied largely by Yemen and Syria. The trading centers were the towns. The rest of Arabia, excepting Yemen and some northern parts, was Bedouin. There were no permanent settlements or places of habitation. The tribes had divided the country between them so that members of a tribe wandered about freely in their part of the country. When the water supply in any place was exhausted, they would move on to some other place and settle down. Their capital consisted of sheep, goats, and camels. From the wool, they made cloth, and from the skins they made tents. What was left over they sold in the market. Gold and silver were not unknown, but they were certainly very rare possessions. The poor and the common folks made ornaments of cowries and sweet-smelling substances. Seeds of melons were cleaned, dried, and strung together to make necklaces. Crime and immoralities of various kinds were rampant. Theft was rare, but dacoity was common. To attack and to dispossess one another was regarded a birthright, but, at the same time, they honored their word more than any other people. Should an individual go to a powerful leader or tribe and ask for protection, that leader or tribe was honor bound to protect that individual. If this was not done, the tribe lost caste throughout Arabia. Poets commanded great prestige. They were honored as national leaders. Leaders were expected to possess great powers of speech and even to be able to compose verse. Hospitality had developed into a national virtue. A forlorn traveler on arrival at the headquarters of a tribe would be treated as an honored guest. The best animals would be slaughtered for him and the utmost consideration shown. They did not care who the visitor was. It was enough that a visitor had arrived. The visit meant an increase of status and prestige for the tribe. It became the tribe's duty, therefore, to honor the visitor. By honoring him, it honored itself.